NBA play-in tournament. So last night's results here, teams eliminated. That would include the Spurs. And then you've got the Hornets that were absolutely trucked by the Hawks.
Yeah,
so then like tomorrow now, it's going to be the Hawks and the Cavs try to play for that 8 seed. Winner will claim it. And then you got the same out in the West, the Clippers and the Pelicans. Really the big story yesterday. Like just what a train wreck, no pun intended, of a day for the Hornets. It started with like a train that stopped in front of their team bus. And then a lot of them had to like get out and poor things. They had to walk to the arena.
Yeah.
And then they just get run over by the Hawks. And then you have like Bridges, who got ejected, Miles Bridges.
And he was getting heckled by fans, and he got frustrated. And he ripped his mouth guard out, and he threw it, and he did not hit the man who was heckling him. He hit an innocent girl.
Yeah, I know. She's like standing there, like enjoying her night.
And she was like, it's also, I just kept watching the video. It was like slow motion. Like she was like, the mouth guard like hit her in the face.
Hits off her like shoulder,
she was
and then her
like,
face, and it's just a bunch of nasty drool.
Ew. Anyway,
he
did reach out on Twitter, and he was like, can somebody get me in touch with her, because that was like inappropriate. I didn't mean to do that. So obviously, like, not his intention, of course.
Yes, it's not. It's not. You just got to stay cool, calm, and collected, just like these guys here. DraftKings contributor Matt Meiselman, RotoWire's Nick Whalen, and Four Seasons podcast host Ryan Magdziraz. Biggest takeaway last night, Mr. Magdziraz, and it was a cold night shooting also for DeJounte Murray. That definitely didn't help the Spurs.
No, that kind of screwed me. I was 100% exposure to DeJounte Murray in all of my lineups, which kind of stunk. But my biggest takeaway was watching the Pelicans, and I couldn't help to think, man, they have debatably a top 15 player not playing in the entire league, Zion. If they get Zion back sometime down the future, not this year, but this team is special. CJ and BI together are great. Joval down low is great. Now they have role players like Herb Jones and Devontae Graham who are doing some things, but adding Zion to this team makes them very, very special. And they looked good last night. New Orleans looked like it was rocking. They could be on the up and up.
Yeah, Maddie, I saw like you and Ehrenberg tweeting back and forth a little bit. Like, is CJ McCollum the best player in the NBA who hasn't made an All-Star game?
I'm only partially kidding about Jose Alvarado. I think that guy's awesome. He's like maybe my favorite player in the league. But yeah, McCollum's really good too. I do think when the Pelicans get Zion back, that's a good call. Like they could be a very interesting team next year. But I was more interested in the Eastern Conference side, where I actually do think the Atlanta Hawks can give the Miami Heat a series. Obviously, they still have to beat the Cavs, but they're actually favored against the Cavs for the upcoming play-in game, despite the fact that the game's in Cleveland. Like the Hawks have been the team that I've found to be undervalued the whole year. They just don't get that much respect. Maybe it was their record early on when they had a bunch of guys out for COVID. They had a slow start. I know they still don't have John Collins, but this is still a team with a lot of good players even after Trae Young. I think this is a pretty deep roster, and I don't think the Heat are that great. So it's a big if that the Hawks still get by the Cavs. They still have to play another game, but to me, that's going to actually be a pretty entertaining series. I don't see that in the West. I think the Pelicans are solid, but the Suns are just too good. So I think the season probably ends for them, even if they get by the Clippers. The Hawks, though, I think have a lot to play for still.
Okay, I like that, Matt. Nick, so out of the potential teams here that could be the 8 seed in either the East or the West, which one do you think could give the top seed in their respective conference the biggest headache?
You know, I think we have to eliminate both of the West teams. You know, all due respect to the Clippers and the Pelicans. It's just that the Suns are that strong, right? Yeah. You know, it's hard to imagine, you know, teams like the Pelicans and the Clips that have kind of been hanging around. It doesn't sound like Kawhi Leonard's going to be back. You know, it's hard to imagine those teams pushing Phoenix. And you can kind of say the same thing about Miami in the East. You know, I don't think Miami's quite at Phoenix's level, but, you know, you have a Hawks team that was in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Maybe they were right all along that they weren't taking the regular season seriously, and they feel like they can just flip this imaginary switch and turn it on when they need to. We'll see if they can actually do that, you know, against the Cavs, a team that's not the Charlotte Hornets, which has now lost back-to-back play-in games by a combined 56 points when you factor in last year's loss. But to me, you know, it's the Hawks or the Cavaliers, and particularly Cleveland, if they can win this game, if they can get Jared Allen back for that first-round series, you know, which would be against Miami. It's a big if. You know, I don't think Cleveland would win the series, but you could see Cleveland stealing a game, maybe 2 games from Miami if a couple things break their way.
All right, Nick, over in the East, which series prop are you looking at? Like, no value with Milwaukee at minus 1,000 over the Bulls. So for the other two series that are set, which bet do you like best here?
Yeah, I mean, there's a decent amount of value when you start to look at that Celtics series, especially, if you are on the Nets, you can get them at plus value. But to me, it's that Philadelphia-Toronto series. Toronto is plus 150 right now to win the series straight up, basically a series money line. And I'm telling you, things are going to get very interesting if the Raptors take one of those first two games in Philly. And I know Matisse Thybulle, it's not like they're playing without Embiid or James Harden, but it's an unnecessary sideshow. It's the type of player defensively that you absolutely want to have, specifically against a team like Toronto that has guys like Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby. Like, those guys are the reason that you have someone like Matisse Thybulle, who's long, who can defend them out on the perimeter, who's going to pressure them as soon as they get over half court. Not having that guy in road games, it's a big deal for Philly. And the drop-off from Matisse Thybulle down to someone like Danny Green, who is either the best or the worst player in the NBA in any given playoff game, it's a pretty big drop-off. So I think especially if Toronto can steal game one or game two, that series is going to get really interesting.
All right, what do you think, Ryan? Where are you looking over in the East?
I'm kind of with Nick. I am terrified of James Harden playing meaningful games and being effective. I also kind of like Nets plus 110 to win the whole series. And I'm a firm believer of the team with the best player in the series has an advantage, no matter what, because the playoffs is different basketball than the regular season. You get down to under 4 minutes in the fourth quarter, okay, here's chess. We give the ball to Kevin Durant, get out of the way, let him do his thing. The double's going to come. Oh, they have Kyrie Irving too. I think, this might be a hot take, that they have the two best players in the entire series. And if you just, I know the Celtics are known for their defense and how they've turned it around since the All-Star break, but if you give me two of the best players in the entire series, I don't know how down the stretch they can double both guys. So I kind of like the Nets plus 110.
All right, Maddie, where are you going?
All right, 1 second. I have to get something.
I knew it. I knew it was coming. I knew it. Go ahead.
This has been my team the entire season. I can't give up on them now. And yeah, I'm not nearly as excited at minus 130. Like, I get why the Nets at plus money would be appealing. The Celtics opened as underdogs for this series, actually. But to me, it's like, yeah, Durant and Kyrie are the two best scorers in the series. I'm not sure that both of them are better than Jason Tatum. Part of it's defense. I think Tatum's defense has really, really improved. But then I think, like, there's a phenomenon where Kyrie and Durant both look better than they are. Like, the efficiency from those guys is not at the level of Giannis and Jokic and Embiid and Steph Curry and even Trae Young, just offense for Trae Young. No, we're not going to include defense for him. But I think that they pass the eye test to a larger degree than their actual ability as scorers. But ultimately, it's just the depth of the teams. Like, yes, I understand in the playoffs, one-on-one and isolation basketball matters more than it does in the regular season. But the Nets still have to have three other guys on the court, and Seth Curry is playing injured. Bruce Brown has played way over his head offensively. I don't think he can continue being a lights-out three-point shooter. He has no track record of that. And Andre Drummond is not the guy to capitalize on the loss of Robert Williams. I think this matchup is less problematic for the Celtics than, let's say, the Bucks series, where not having that interior defense with Robert Williams is going to be a problem. The Nets are much more of a perimeter team. I don't think that the Williams loss is that much of an issue for this first round. So, yes, we need Time Lord back if we're going to make a run to the finals. But for the first round, I think the Celtics are well positioned, even at minus 130, to have a decent edge for this series. And I'm gonna remove this now.
Yeah.
This is just for one answer.
Thank you very much.
That was beautiful.
Jeff Pratt 2.0. How about your favorite series prop for the West right now, Ryan? I'm looking at, what do we have here? Oh, the Nuggets plus 210 against the Warriors? I don't know. What's the latest with, like, Steph Curry and then Jokic stays on the floor for every single second of the game? That'd be tough to knock him off.
Yeah, I'm kind of clueless on that series over there. I don't know how healthy Steph is, and I don't know how they're going to guard Jokic, who, their weakness is defense against bigs. So I'm staying away from that, but I sneaky like this Mavs plus 230. I know Luka has a kind of an injured calf right now. I haven't heard how serious it is. What if he comes out and he's not fazed by it? If you're going to get Mavs 230 as the 4 seed over a Jazz team who they're so hot and cold, and they're a great regular season team usually, and they were the 5 seed this year. I don't know if they can just turn it on and be something special beyond what they were in the regular season. So even with a 60-70% Luka, I kind of like Mavs plus 230. And as the series goes on, hopefully he gets healthier and healthier. I like that. I think it's a steal.
All right. Do you consider any of these odds in the West a steal, Matt?
I have a little bit of a different outlook on this Jazz Mavericks series, although like I agree with what Ryan's saying there. If Luka does play and he's anything like the normal Luka, plus 230 is a really enticing line for the Mavericks. But I think despite the fact that the Mavericks have not said anything definitive about Luka Doncic, we can kind of read into it and just say he's not playing game one. I mean, Utah was an underdog when that line opened. They're minus 4.5 for the first game in Dallas. The odds makers are not expecting Luka to be out there. I think he probably misses game two. So I'm not really ready to bet the Mavericks yet. I think the Jazz are a better team than people give them credit for. The collapses, I think, are causing a little bit of a bias, like these second half leads that they've blown late in the season. So maybe it's a wait and see, but if we get Luka back for, let's say, game 2, game 3, game 4, and Dallas is down in the series, I think I'm much more interested to live bet them to win the series later on once they get him in the lineup, because I do think he ultimately gets ruled out for game 1. Game 1 is less than 48 hours from now. They still have said nothing, and I just don't think it's very likely he's on the court. So once he's back out there, I do think Dallas is right up there with Utah, and they could be pretty big underdogs at that point. So it could be a pretty good value to get them later on in the series.
All right, Whalen, we're looking for your favorite series prop in the West.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way about Dallas. It's a wait and see situation. I mean, there's an argument to be made that if we get news within the next couple of days that Luka is back at practice, his calf is feeling better, I think that number is going to drop dramatically. So you might lose value in that sense. But I think Matt is on the right track. You don't want to go all in when we don't know what's going on with Luka. And that situation seems to be a lot more iffy or a lot more severe than what we're seeing with Steph Curry, who was back at practice on Wednesday. Seems like he's on track at least to play in game 1 of that series. And you can make the same argument that Matt just made when you kind of read between the lines on these odds. I don't think the Warriors are minus 250 to win the series if we're wondering if Steph Curry is going to be healthy in the series. I think the Mavs being plus 230 tells you everything you need to know right now about how Luka Doncic's calf is shaping up, and the Warriors minus 250 tells you everything about how Curry's foot is shaping up. So if Steph was going into that series a little hobbled, keep in mind, Steph, Curry, Draymond, or Steph, Clay, and Draymond have only played like 1.2 games together this season. Like, that's a pretty big if. If Steph was still hobbled, I would kind of like Denver to maybe sneak in and steal that series. But if Steph is going to be playing, and even if he's at 85, 90%, I think that's enough for me to stay away from that Denver line.
All right, which series spread are you most confident about right now, Matt? Memphis only minus 135 to beat the Wolves in 4, 5, or 6 games.
Yeah, it kind of feels like everyone here and then elsewhere is a little too high on Nuggets relative to like what the Warriors have been. And it's weird for me to say because I've been fading Golden State the whole year. But the reason I've been anti-Warriors is mostly due to the fact that they're giving minutes to guys like Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody, who I do think have bright futures ahead of them, but are just not very effective players yet. Like, they're rookies, they make a lot of mistakes. I think the team is a lot worse when those guys are playing big minutes. But for the playoffs, I mean, for one, I'm assuming Steph Curry at least is on the court for game 1, and then by game 2, 3, 4, he's close to full strength. But I think guys like Otto Porter Jr. and Andre Iguodala will play much bigger minutes in the playoffs with their veteran experience, and then also just being better players who I think the team was worried about keeping healthy throughout the year. In the playoffs, I think we see more of those guys, and it's a much more efficient Warriors team. So the bet I like is probably to lay the 1.5 games on the series spread, plus 100 for minus 1.5 games. Taking minus 150 to win the series, I think, is okay too. It's a little less appealing just in terms of the odds, but I am actually pretty optimistic about the Warriors' chances. I worry about Jokic, but like the Nuggets don't have much else. Jamal Murray's doubtful for the series. Michael Porter Jr. almost certainly will not be back. So I think the Warriors are the much better team, especially when they get this playoff-style rotation with Iggy, with Otto Porter, more Clay minutes, more Draymond minutes. I think there's a lot of really good players who are going to play more in the playoffs for them.
All right, Nick, what do you think? Which series spread are you most confident about right now?
That's the one that jumps out to me too, and it kind of runs contrary to what we just talked about, where the Warriors are pretty heavy favorites. What was it, minus 250 to win that series? And if we think Curry's going to be healthy, and the Nuggets are not going to have Michael Porter, they're not going to have Jamal Murray. We saw this team get absolutely pummeled by Phoenix in round 2 last year when it was kind of just Jokic and MPJ. I think the Warriors, if they're at full strength, they probably win this series by more than 1.5 games. That gives you Warriors in 6. It obviously gives you Warriors in 4 or Warriors in 5. So I like that call by Matt. And then you're not getting a ton of value. It's minus 170, but Milwaukee minus 2.5. It's certainly better than betting them at minus 1,000 to win the series. That gives you Bucks in 4 or Bucks in 5. I think Bucks in 5 probably the most likely outcome, but pretty hard the way that Chicago has played this season to imagine that series going more than 5 games.
All right, Ryan, what do you think?
I agree. The most confident in is Bucks by a mile, but you have to bet $1 million to win a ham sandwich. So I'm not really interested in those odds. The Memphis, it's now minus 330. And I don't know why the line started so low, but if you guys were watching the Kenny and Chuck and Shaq talk about how the Wolves actually have a fighting chance, I don't see it at all. And maybe all that hype on national television got this line to where it was. But they just won their Super Bowl. They celebrated like it was a championship. And I think Memphis is just laughing, and they're going to come to Memphis and just get blown out. So it was a good consolation prize for the Wolves, but I don't think they have a chance against this Memphis team.